Welcome to Restorers, a Water Street Mission podcast. Over these upcoming minutes, we'll be speaking with heroes in Lancaster County and beyond who are making a positive impact on men and women experiencing homelessness and poverty. Each episode, we'll speak with an expert from the community, as well as one of our own Water Street Mission staff members, to learn more about how each of them are working to make a difference locally. Without further ado, let's dive right in.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Restorers podcast. We are so excited to get started with this new podcast, to engage with you and share hopefully things that are going to be interesting, entertaining, edifying, and that we can learn more about what's going on in the world of Water Street and in the community of individuals that we connect with every day. Today, being our first episode, we have a special guest, actually from New York City, Josiah Hakin, who is the Chief Program Officer at City Relief. And Josiah has been at this work for quite a while, coming alongside our friends and neighbors experiencing homelessness in the city of New York. And just want to start out, Josiah, could you tell us a little bit about City Relief and about the work that you do?
Oh, absolutely. It's so good to be here. So City Relief is a mobile outreach program started in 1989 by these folks who just believed that when God wrote in Isaiah 58 that we're supposed to feed the hungry and clothe the naked and provide the poor wanderer with shelter, that God wasn't being metaphorical.
We should actually do that.
Yeah, we should actually do that. So they got this idea of taking a bus that's been retrofitted to open up on the sidewalk and create sort of a block party environment for folks who are experiencing homelessness to feel welcome, to receive a free meal, to get essentials like socks and toiletries, but then most importantly, to connect with our volunteers and our staff on a human level so that we can help point them and connect them to organizations.
So it's not purely, even though relief is in your name, it's not purely relief.
Correct.
It's relief so that you can go beyond that.
Exactly. It's all about connections. So the relief is what leads to the connections. Because we know there's so many people experiencing homelessness who are traumatized, who are stressed out, who are frustrated, who don't know where to go, or they go to the wrong place at the wrong time, or talk to the wrong intake door and end up getting turned away. Yeah. So what we try to do is try to create that sort of space where we can help people navigate those challenges and those barriers that actually can get in the way of someone getting off the street altogether.
Awesome. How long have you been at it, Josiah?
So I volunteered for the first time with City Relief in 2010.
Okay.
And then I just sort of stuck around. And it's like, classic nonprofit. You stick around long enough, they just put you in charge of stuff.
I lived that story.
Exactly. So you understand it very well. So I started out as an outreach leader, just taking teams out into the streets and trying to help our guests, who are experiencing homelessness, navigate the city services. And I've been at it ever since. So now, I lead our volunteer team, our outreach teams, and our follow-up care teams, and then our community partnerships team. So.
Yeah, what an amazing work you guys are doing up there. And I've heard great things from our partner ministries in the New York area and who see and know what you're doing. And I know your heartbeat for the individuals. One of the biggest challenges when you're walking with somebody or working in a ministry that's working with people experiencing homelessness, there's connotations and there's kind of, we make these assumptions about individuals who are experiencing homelessness. How have you encountered those, and how do you battle that as an organization and individually?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many stereotypes and stigmas about homelessness in general. And so for us, what we try to do is we try to help our volunteers and our teams start with the basics, which is that every person is made in the image of God, has intrinsic worth just by existing. That they don't have to do anything to earn their help. They don't. There's no like deserving and undeserving poor. There's just people. And so if we can start there, then we can actually create spaces where people are treated like people. And then what we found is excellent customer service actually leads to trust. And then trust is what leads to transformation. Wow. So for us, we try to build that trust with excellent customer service and then help our volunteers and our guests understand that everything starts there with that experience. So helping our guests and helping both our volunteers and our guests sort of interact and create this space where they see each other as peers, as rather than sort of a transactional experience.
It's an us and them
environment.
Yeah. Wow. I love that phrase. I'm going to try to get it. excellent customer service leads to trust, and trust leads to transformation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
wow, I got it. That's fantastic. What a great kind of embedded culture for an organization like yours, and I think it reflects what we try to do here at Water Street as well.
Candidly, I mean, so one of the things I get to do as part of my work is I get to kind of walk into missions with folks in the street and sort of experience their what they experience as they walk in the door. And I'm a huge fan of Water Street because this is something that you guys embody in so many different ways as you try to create these spaces, like in your dining hall and the shelter intake process and the collaboration that you do to create spaces for people who are experiencing homelessness, who are experiencing trauma and health issues and abuse. Yeah. I mean, 90% of women who have experienced homelessness have experienced sexual or violent assault at some point in their lives. So you're dealing with the reality where if you create spaces where guests can come in and feel safe and feel welcome and feel dignity, it's transformative. Right. And so I feel like that's what you guys embody here at Water Street. And so like I've been cheering you on from a distance ever since I met your team, I think at one of the Citygate conferences. And I've just loved the way that you guys have intentionally created that space for our homeless neighbors.
Yeah, and that is something that it was an intentional shift that we made. So I think for years, we've always tried to focus our services and our relationships in that way, where we value the individual as they're an individual created in the image of God. They're worthy of value and dignity and respect. And I think our staff has carried that well for decades, to be honest. Way predating me, that's been the heartbeat behind Water Street. Our facilities haven't always communicated that. And I'm so grateful that over the last several years, because of our partners and supporters in the community, we've been able to completely transform our campus. And we just walked through the Providence shelter.
It makes all the difference. I mean, I can't even tell you. So I've had people who I think of one guy who I walked into a shelter with. And it felt oppressive. Like it felt like you're walking, like there's metal detectors as you walk in, there's security telling you like empty your pockets. You feel like and honestly, like you walk into a lot of these shelters, these spaces that are designed to help people who are in the street, and it feels like you're walking into a sort of an enemy territory where you're not the reason the place exists. You're actually the reason the place needs to exist. So, like you're almost like a chore, or the person feels like almost like a dependent. And when you walk into those spaces, it just reaffirms your feeling of your low self-esteem and helplessness and hopelessness. And unfortunately, that's become normalized, I think, because a lot of organizations spend so much money trying to, provide stuff for their guests that sometimes they forget that it's not just about the stuff you provide, it's the experience you create where that stuff is provided.
Yeah, and who's it all for?
Exactly.
Who's it all for? I worked at a camp when I was in my college years, and I remember a couple of my coworkers, we used to joke about this, but a couple of them genuinely felt like camp would be such an awesome job, such an awesome place to be if it wasn't for all these kids. Yes. Right? Yes. And so that's the mindset we've got to guard against.
It's so easy because because again, it's stressful, right? You're dealing with people who have very real issues and very real pain. And again, they will come in and they will project onto you what their experience has been. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is you almost have to like, right on the front door, right as you walk in, the first experience, you almost have to create a counter narrative around homeless services, that this is a space where you will be cared for as a human being, as a person with dignity, as a person with value. And because the mentality going into those spaces is that I'm not worth it. Yeah. And I need them more than they need me. Yeah. So there's a power dynamic between the person who's welcoming guests and the guests themselves. Right. Because the person at the welcome center, or whatever you want to call it, is usually in the position of power to say you can come in, you can't. Right. And so eliminating that power dynamic and almost creating a different kind of environment where it is a customer service experience. Right. I think what we tell our volunteers a lot is that, if Matthew 25 is real, then, the verse that says that whatever you've done for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you've done it to me. It's the famous verse. Well, if that's true, then that means every guest that walks through our doors and every guest I meet in the street represents Christ.
Yeah.
And if Christ is the one who died for me, then I don't just owe this person my compassion.
Right.
I owe this person my appreciation.
Wow.
And so I actually need to be grateful for the opportunity to even be in the presence of this person who gets to somehow embody the Christ who died for my salvation, right? So there is these dynamics that I think a lot of people miss in the effort to just to meet needs.
Yeah.
And I love what you guys are doing here at Water Street, because it's, again, I don't see that because there's a priority on the experience, on the dignity, on the human. It's beautiful.
Well, and there's definitely an intentionality that has to be there, because you can't completely eliminate those dynamics of the power differential, right? Because somebody is coming through the door needing assistance, needing help, and somebody on the other side is part of the pathway to receive what's needed. So you can't completely eliminate that, but what can you do to counter that narrative, to create an experience that doesn't feel that way, and really values the individual? And that goes back to building trust, right? That's the end goal, because we know trust leads to transformation, as you said. As you've walked along and doing outreach and connecting with people on the street, that inability to trust, how have you seen that manifested? And talk about that challenge. I'd love to hear how you've worked to overcome that challenge of building trust.
So there's a couple easy ways. So for the first of all is, I think, showing the people that you serve or that you engage with that you're there by choice, that you want to be there, that we're actually here. So creating an environment with your teams and your staff and your volunteers that's this is an experience that's fun, this experience that's light. We want to set the mood. And so if you walk in, I tell volunteers, I'm look, and if you're having a really bad day, if you're grumpy, if you have a big test tomorrow, let me know so I can put you somewhere in the back so that you're not going to ruin the experience for our guests who probably are going on.
You can
months.
Still help, but just don't talk to anybody.
Just don't talk to anybody. Because it's true. Because when you have that experience, someone walks in the door. I know I've had this experience going into a restaurant or going into a hotel or whatever, and I walk in the door and I'm like, excuse me, I'm here, and there's a person behind the desk who's next, I don't want to help, and it just makes you feel really down. It makes you feel like you're wasting that time. So creating that space that's smiling, making it fun. Music. One of the things we've discovered is that using music at our outreaches is a great way to sort of set the mood, and have our guests dance and feel light and free and feel normal. And so for that, I think that's part of the building trust, is establishing that space. And then I think a couple other things that come to mind are honesty, being honest with your guests. So I found that sometimes people treat their homeless guests almost like children, sort of paternalistic almost, okay, so you don't really understand the dynamics of my job, so I'm not going to explain it to you. So for example, if I run out of something on the street and then a person comes up and is hey, I came out, I waited in here and you guys didn't call my name and I didn't get the socks that I wanted, they're frustrated, and I'd be look, man, I'm really sorry. Honestly, we just ran out. We brought 200. You weren't here. I gave it away to somebody else. I know it stinks. Maybe I can try to help you next week by setting a pair aside. But taking the time to explain why someone is getting turned away, why the situation isn't good, and then being ready to admit, I screwed up. I just messed up. I was supposed to have this for you.
You're allowed to do that?
You're allowed to do that.
Explain
Absolutely.
that you made a mistake or you messed up.
Yeah, it's rocket science, right?
Wow.
But that goes to being honest, which again, I think a lot of folks in homeless services forget. They forget that you can just be honest. This situation stinks. I'm doing my best here. So that's a key thing. And another thing I think is consistency. I think I invented this word for a workshop I did a while ago called compassioncy, being compassionate consistently. So when that person walks up and says literally no shirt, no shoes, and you have this, a lot of missions or a lot of programs have all these clothes, but they'll say, sorry, we can't help you because it's not the right time, because you're not here between the hours of 2 and 4, and that's when we give out clothing. And so I'm sorry, we can't help you. Instead of saying, okay, this person is in genuine need, we need a framework where we can be consistently compassionate, which means that we're making exceptions for people who need them, but we're doing it in a way that's consistent, that doesn't set us up for failure.
But isn't making an exception, that's inconsistent.
Unless you have a framework for those exceptions.
Yeah. Is it about consistency to the program and the schedule and those things, or is it consistent to the principles of why we're doing this in the first place?
And is there a process that your team can create that will allow for those exceptions? So, for example, if I am going to give something outside of the normal hours, I can maybe have a checks and balance situation where I can connect with another staff member, create those systems. We're like, okay, so we're going to do this once a month. We're going to get his name. We're not going to make this exception next time. Yeah. Anyway, communication also.
And I'm guessing that, you guys, with the amazing environment that you create and the heart behind the service and everything, then usually everybody who comes and receives help from you is incredibly grateful and immediately trusts you and is ready to take the next step on their journey, right?
Oh, everybody. Absolutely. 100%. No, not even close.
So it's not about that.
No.
Trust takes something more.
Exactly. No, 100%. And so, and that's where it's the consistency side of things also, of saying, like, we're here at the same time. If we say we're going to be somewhere, we're there.
Yeah.
If we say, so like, I think of like Brene Brown is a leadership coach and guru, and she writes this book, Dare to Lead, which has this great expression as clear as kind. And I feel like there's a level of clarity that's kind, where you're just clear with somebody, and if they don't like it and they curse you out and run out the door because they, you didn't respond to them the way they want.
Right.
Sometimes being clear is the kind thing to do, and say, okay, well, maybe that person's not ready today, but maybe tomorrow. I had one guy who got into a huge fight. He came back the next week and apologized to me for the interaction. Yeah. And so I think that creating an environment where people who maybe they get triggered, maybe they have a bad day, maybe there's someone else there who's also having a bad day, and the two things collide. But if you can create a space where that individual knows they are loved in spite of what they've done, in spite of messing up, they will come back sometimes, and you'll actually have a second shot at it. Yeah. And so creating those opportunities after opportunities.
It's not always the first contact. It's rarely, almost never, to be honest. Yeah. But it's over time. And we even see that at this phase where they're coming into shelter. Yeah. It's often not their first time in shelter with us is not the time when we see significant progress. That's a place where we can begin to establish the standard of, like, you're going to be cared for here. You're going to be loved. You're going to be treated with value and dignity. And then it may be a season out, and then they come back, and they're like, okay, and they treated me the same way again.
Yep.
And I think that's something that stands out to us, and it's as we've shifted things, just that realization that I've left, I've screwed up again, I come back, the shame that can come with that. But when they're received with the same level of love, compassion, dignity, remembering their name, remembering, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay after all that experience? We're here for you. You see the reaction of some of our guests to that, and just like, oh my gosh, like they didn't write me off just because I left.
It's almost like there's something to this whole grace thing. It's bizarre, right? It's almost like there's something.
Jesus was onto something.
He may have been. He may have been.
Why do we doubt? The last thing I want to touch on, because we're going to have some conversation with one of our life coaches in a little bit, who actually had spent time here as a guest as well. But that experience of coming in the door, you've mentioned how you've walked with people that you've been getting to know on the street into a shelter, and that experience. Beyond the physical presentation, what are some of the things that you feel are critical? So doing outreach, all those principles, but when somebody comes in the door to a shelter, what are some of those things that are maybe we can learn from you that are critical for our guests in those first few days, first few weeks that they're with us?
Yeah, I love the environment that you've created here in terms of just walking in the door and the sense of it and the feeling you get and the intentionality around that. I think that makes a huge difference. I also think that being consistent with what you can expect. I think so. One thing I think about is how restaurants a lot of times have their hours posted on the door, and there's like a very clear understanding of like if they're closed, they're closed. So I missed it, and I think a lot of times even missions and shelters sometimes don't want to post hours, or there's like this concern about a line forming, or there's these other dynamics. But the problem is that when you don't have that clear sense of, okay, so I need to be here, I'm in the right place. How can I affirm to the guests as they walk in that they're not lost? And so creating that navigation. For people, that's really clear. Like, oh, I need to be at this place if I'm looking for this service. So I also think like having staff who are super friendly, be the first point of contact. I mean, I was kind of joking about the volunteer thing, but it's true. You walk in and you don't have that experience where you feel seen and loved. It's really difficult to overcome that. You're fighting uphill the whole way. So I think that first walk in, understanding what's available, being communicated to as a person. I know, for example, one quick thing is I walk into a place with a guest, and a lot of times the welcome person will talk to me, and I'm like, no, you need to talk to my friend here. This is Steve. Steve actually needs a place to stay. Can you please talk to Steve? So addressing the guest as the focus of the
that's who you're building a relationship with. That's
Makes
who
a
you're
huge
going to walk
difference.
with. That's a great insight, and a lot of that ties back to what you shared before about clear is kind. And clarity of expectations, clarity of what's going to really be available, and then treating people with dignity and respect. Man, I would like to talk for like another half hour, 2 hours. There's so much going on in New York with City Relief. There's so much we can learn from your experiences on the street. I appreciate you joining us today, Josiah. Just really excited about the work that you're doing and how we've learned together on this journey. So appreciate you being here. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. I want to give a profound thanks to our Season 1 podcast sponsor, Rogers & Associates, who's helping us tremendously in this first year of the Restorers podcast. They're a wealth management firm that helps clients become financially independent for retirement. You can learn more about them online at rogers-associates.com or by calling 717-560-3800. That's Rogers, RODGERS-associates.com, or by calling 717-560-3800. Thank you so much, Rogers & Associates. Welcome back. We're really excited for the second part of our conversation today to follow up on some of what we were talking about with Josiah around the experience of our guests, individuals who are experiencing homelessness and making that transition as Josiah connects with them on the street in New York. We experience that here at Water Street where guests are coming in, whether they're coming from a broken housing situation or whether literally they're coming from the street and that experience. And so to join us for the second part of our conversation, I'm excited. We have one of our newest staff members, Lawrence Herbert, who is a senior life coach here at Water Street and has been on. How long have you been with us on staff?
I've been on staff here at Water Street for approximately 2 months.
2 months. Awesome. And jumping right in as a senior life coach, caring for our guests and connecting with them. Lawrence, thanks for being here today.
You are so welcome.
Yeah, and so as I mentioned with Josiah, we were talking about this dynamic of how difficult it is to build trust with individuals who've experienced so much trauma. Mm-hmm. Then that transition. You've experienced that yourself.
I have.
And so you're currently on staff, but that wasn't your introduction to Water Street.
It was not. I currently showed up at Water Street a couple years ago, and during that time we were really activating the OCS, which is the shelter. A really dark place, really dark, very cold, very, very lonely type of place. When I walked in the door, I didn't know if I wanted to stay here or leave. I did have the courage to stay and walk through the transition of the shelter that we offer here, which is not the program. You know, you're not at the program point. You're just shelter and trying to get some food up in you, get some rest, maybe get some clothes to wear, a few things like that. So I was really, it was really a scary time for me.
Yeah. And our here at Water Street, we've done shelter in different ways through the years, mm-hmm. and at the time that you came through, we had an old cinder block building with a lot of bunks. I think on the one side, we had about 45 bunk beds packed in together, just a few feet apart. And we were making the best we could of the space we had.
Absolutely.
But the experience wasn't what we wanted, wasn't what we know is important for our guests. And so, tell me about that. When you walked in the first night staying in shelter, what that's like when you're packed in a room with guys like that.
Well, the first night for me was very cold, and there was a lot of men, and there was really no room to move. I couldn't really find my niche in there because I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. You take a shower. There's a line for a shower. There's a line for a sheet. There's a line for a pillow. Where do I sleep? Where is my bed? What side of the room it's on? Like you just said, Jack, the beds were packed on top of each other, one after another. So my experience was at that time to give up. I was going to turn around and go the other way. God held me in here, and I stayed, but I personally wanted to leave because I was afraid.
Yeah, and it breaks my heart to know that that here at Water Street, and honestly at missions and shelters all across the country in different cities, that's often the experience. Because we're looking and you're balancing these two challenges of caring for as many people as possible, so you want to get as many beds in, but recognizing that when you overload a space, you're creating a context that is dehumanizing, and that can be really painful to somebody's experience.
And I was also able to focus on the staff that particular night, my first night, and there was maybe 2 men and maybe 1 woman, and you can tell they were just overwhelmed. It was just so much coming at them at one time. When you're coming in that type of way, we all were desperate. We were desperate people, and we all had needs. And we needed our needs met like right now, you know? And the staff, they did the best, but they were overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. And we have, as I was talking with Josiah, like, we've always hired and found staff who have just an amazing heart for our guests, to truly love them, truly want to come alongside and walk and serve with them. None of us are perfect.
Not at all. Not at all.
But really with a desire to do that. But in that context, even the best heart, it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. Now, you've had the privilege to then walk with us and now come back on staff.
I have.
And see the new environment. A year and a half ago, we opened up Providence Shelter.
Yes.
And maybe you could give us a contrast. What's it like now? You're not walking in there to sleep, but you know that experience, and now you're walking with some of our guests in that.
Well, we're definitely in a different place. And I was homeless, so I understand the homeless situation. But when a man or a woman walks into Water Street today, I don't know if that same fear is there as it was a couple years ago.
Right.
What I see now, because I have an opportunity to work in Providence maybe once a week, there's safety, there's comfort, there's smiles, there's hope, there's even unity in there now. It's a spacious building, you know. You have men on one side, women on the other. There's bedding, there's snacks, there's toiletries, there's towels, there's central air.
Yeah.
In a shelter.
Yeah.
There's always enough staff. We even have, well, I say we because I'm part of this.
Yeah, you are.
We have comfort rooms for them, like sanctuary rooms where they can go if you're not able to sleep. You want to read the Bible. We have rooms for them set off where they can do that.
Yeah.
So the word now would be when they walk in, safety.
Safety. That's so important, man, because that's what's lacking, right? In that whole transition phase, you've lost your home, you've lost your apartment, the relationship breakdown that leads to having to walk into a shelter.
Absolutely.
All of those things have been eroding at that sense of safety.
Yes.
And being able to, that means so much to hear you describe that, having walked that journey.
Yes.
That's so important. And I think the comfort rooms that you talk about, man.
Excellent.
That was actually birthed out of the overnight staff who were working with the guests. And as we were talking about, what do we need to put in this new shelter, and their conversations with the guests, it's that the guys, first time off the street, can't sleep. You've been experiencing trauma from all kinds of directions, and now you're in a room as safe as it might feel, as aesthetically pleasing as it might be.
Yes.
You're not going to sleep normal, and so having that ability to kind of like not just be shushed to be, hey, you got to be quiet for everybody else's sake.
You have a place you can go.
You can go over here, chill, calm down, read a book, read the Bible, listen to a little music, and then settle down when you're ready. And that also serves a great purpose for our guests who are working, right? Because some of our shelter guests, they've got jobs. They may be getting off at 1 a.m., coming to a room where everybody's already in bed and expecting them to climb in bed and go to sleep right away. None of us do that at home. So having that comfort room where they can take that time, that's a big piece of it. Yes. So I'd love to hear if in your 2 months back, have you seen among our guests, and feel free to share a story if any come to mind, of a guest who that difference, that feeling of safety and just how the environment has changed here has impacted their openness, their willingness to trust and connect with staff.
Well, yeah, I think because of the way that they come in the door now, from the door we're winning. because when they walk in now, they're not just walking in hopeless, or some of the words they might use for the mission, because of the word mission. So I don't know if we carry that stigma anymore. It's more like when they come in and they want more of what we're offering because of the attraction when they walk in. It almost says, we have more for you. We have more than this.
Yeah.
The relationships here down in the shelter are truly relationships today.
Yeah.
Guys are bonding, and they're bonding with staff. We used to be almost like the enemy, but now we're like their friends now. They come to us, they talk to us about their children, about going upstairs is the big conversation now.
Yeah.
Because I work in residential.
Yeah.
Going upstairs is the biggie. Lawrence, what do I need to do? When can I see you? When do I have my assessment? All that stuff's important because they want more of what we have to offer as pertains to before. They leave the shelter, go out, drink, get drunk the whole day. Now they're not doing that. They're trying to stay close to us because they want more of what we have to offer because of the attraction when they first came to us. It says more.
Wow. That is.
And that did that for me because I came here with 10 years clean from drugs and alcohol when I showed up here.
Right.
And when I walked in here, I said, oh, this could never happen for me. How did I get here? But I wanted more because I had staff people talking about different things about God. And I wanted more. So I stayed. So, yeah, our word today is more. They're hungry.
Yeah.
Every day guys are trying to figure out, how do I get upstairs? What do I need to do? I don't need to work right now. I just need to.
Well, and that's
beautiful.
That really hits home for me because some of our transition when I've been in this role, we've struggled with that for years and years and years. We'd see 10% of our guests who come into shelter actually elect to go further. To take that offer of more and come into our residential. Absolutely. And we see that in a lot of programs across the country where there's almost a distinction. You've got shelter and you've got residential, and it's two different populations. Very, very rarely do you see somebody making that leap from shelter to residential. And one of our desires was we didn't want residential to just be some magnet program where people are coming.
Yes.
We wanted it to be for those men and women coming off the street where they would understand there's more for you. You don't have to do this cycle. You don't have to just rush out and try to do it on your own. And to hear you describe that and define that really speaks to what we were trying to accomplish.
And we also have all kinds of avenues here. I mean, you have the program, the res, of course, if you can come up and you do our program.
Right. Which
is we're trying to get you committed and connected to something higher than yourself. The reference point, we try to teach them the reference point should not remain you. The reference point needs to be somewhere else. So when they come in and they say, hey, man, I'm not worried about working because our program is not a work program. It's a program to bring about connection to something, some life skills, and some job training before you come to talk about, I'm going to work. So we give them 3 to 4 months to kind of work with that, get something underneath their legs, get something, connections and stuff, and then we piecemeal, we give it to them. Part-time job, certain things like that.
Yeah, so work your way in.
Work your way in.
And it's safe to fail.
It's safe
you're
to
here.
fail. Yes.
If things don't go right, you got somebody to come back and process with. You got somebody to help you navigate the next steps, and that's part of that model. Whereas when you're trying to do it on your own, things go wrong 2 weeks in,
and the way am I turning?
Yeah.
So we give them the room for failure because failure is part of life.
It's part of our process.
But hey, come talk to me about it. Let's see if we can revamp your plan, and we'll go another direction. I had the opportunity even here at Water Street to go to college. I never went to college before. See, I came here and it opened where I had a revelation here where it said, hey, your talents are being wasted somewhere from the staff here. You would be good doing this, and that.
Yeah.
That happened for me here.
Yeah. Well, and we're grateful that turned into you coming back.
I am back.
And being in this role and coming back in this way where you can serve and love on others and find that same thing to speak into their lives.
What a blessing.
And we are so grateful for you, Lawrence, for the work that you're doing with our guests. We're grateful for the time you spent with us this morning, and I'm just looking forward. I hope you who are watching this appreciate this journey that Lawrence has been on and what we're trying to provide for our guests here. And imperfect as we are, trying to learn the lessons of the past so we can provide that environment of safety and where people will want to engage in more. So thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you very much.